What's up, buttercups? And RIP to the buttercup named as was Iryna Zarutska. I think that's her name. I'm probably saying that wrong. I'll have to look it up again. But quite the interesting time to be commenting as we come off of Zarutska. Probably saying that wrong. Iryna Zarutska, the Ukrainian refugee who was stabbed on the train by a psychopath just the other day. Now, coming into this, there's a lot to unpack because we've seen what's gone on in the wake of this. We've seen the video, which, by the way, it's interesting to see how many cities have now said that they will not be releasing public transport videos because they quote, and this is a direct quote from San Francisco, they do not want to foment racism. Now, those of you that are familiar with the Pythagorean theorem of a squared plus b squared equals c squared can figure out what that actually means. But before we talk about what that means, guys, go to our Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty, and you can join there for as little as $5 a month, get our bonus content, including Degenerate Gamblers, my Good Morning Rants, Secrets, Lies, and Cover-Ups, and much more. Plus, you get Meme Wars, which is our show we do with me, Lou Perez, John Odermatt, and Brian Nichols. Of course, all the members of the Lions of Liberty going through some memes for the week. So make sure to check that out. You can also join on Locals. lionsofliberty.locals.com. Okay, so the absolute truth of the matter here is that when you see videos come out, and we've seen multiple videos come out. I mean, I say multiple, and that's not even getting into the hundreds of videos. And I'm not just talking about specifically public transport attacks, which I have seen over and over again. And this is where it becomes difficult to do this, by the way, because when you talk about issues like this, which involve races and race-on-race crime, like, for example, what happened with this Ukrainian refugee, right? She was attacked by a psycho black man muttering after he kills this girl unprovoked, stabbing her in the neck with a folding knife. She's doing nothing but minding her own business, just goes up behind her and stabs her in the neck. This is a multiple arrest criminal. He has been in jail multiple times. He's been arrested multiple times. And yet, because he's in a city where they are lax on keeping people in jail, lax on enforcement, you've got DAs and judges who are very much inclined to let people of a specific race go. And that race happens to be black, or let's say non-white, just to be simple. And people will say, well, this is racist. You can't say that. But it's not when it keeps happening again and again. And the proof is out there so predominantly of what is tantamount. I can say, you can either say it's anti-white racism, which it is in the way in which the media and leftists portray these things, right? Which is emphasizing optics over safety, but also ignoring the statistical attacks of black on white, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But in this instance, you see a video like this of a black man attacking a white girl, defenseless white girl, and then literally saying, this was denied by every left-wing media until the video came out, showing it very clearly, I got that white girl. Says it over and over again, I got that white girl. Now, this is following a pattern. This is a pattern the media and the leftists want to ignore of black on white crime. Or during COVID, black on Asian crime, wherein you've got these people that are violent, they're psychos. Now, whether or not these are people are purely unhinged mentally, which is definitely part of the time, right? Like this guy is clearly off his rocker. He's a violent psychopath. There are many violent psychopaths out there. But again, when you're talking about leftist cities, you're talking about cities that are not enforcing any sort of law upon vagrants. And they're not enforcing law to keep people in prisons. In fact, they are, as we mentioned before, they are intentionally releasing people. I remember seeing a video in DC, I think it was a former police chief, talking about how the average criminal that gets arrested for homicide in DC, or this is probably a national statistic, has been arrested 11 times. So you have a distinct pattern of behavior here, yet they let these people walk. I mean, a psychotic instance in the UK was released to the news where a bus bomber and I think it was a trio of Muslims, had blown up a bus, killing 52 people. Well, one of them just got released. Because they said he was incompetent to stand trial. And in the UK, you're not allowed to jail or keep people incarcerated that are incompetent to stand trial. So this man who is guilty of blowing up a bus with 52 innocent people on it walks the streets of Britain once more. We have a similar situation here in that every one of these judges is an activist judge. You have a scenario where all these people, because of the cultural movement to say, okay, we have to have equity, right? We have to have, because again, equality doesn't mean equality of outcomes. And also equality doesn't mean that you elect everybody that goes, like let's say 12% of the population, which is like the black population, right? That means you probably should have 12% of the judges would be black, right? If we're talking about, all right, a rationale and an equal distribution compared to the population of the United States. But what has happened is that you have people pushing, obviously from the left, strongly pushing activist judges in. You have people that are on the white side of things that feel guilty because of the way in which the world is working out, and they're told that black people have been continuously abused and must be given the benefit of an uptick in representation across all sectors. Now you have people that are being pushed into positions which, number one, they may not be qualified for. But I'm not saying this is everybody. Obviously, there are very qualified black judges. I mean, look at some of our Supreme Court justices, one of which is black, one of which is very, very, very intelligent, and very much on the bad side of the left. It just happens to work out that way. But you've got people that are being pushed into these positions that are running, that are not qualified, or that are purely running to get their worldview across. And they're going to do that in a judicial manner by releasing people early, or by giving people very light sentences or no sentences, or releasing them on cashless bail. And we've seen time and time again what has happened here is that these people are going out and committing additional crimes, committing homicides, murders, rapes, robberies, when they should be incarcerated. But they're being given the 15 times over the benefit of the doubt and a free pass to continue to break the law, to continue to destroy communities. And then, as we mentioned earlier, 11 times most homicide murderers have been arrested, they eventually end up killing someone, as with Iryna Zarutska. Now, I've seen so many videos, as I mentioned, of the black on white crime, the black and white attacks, and pushing people in front of trains, attacking people in broad daylight for no reason. I mean, the number of videos I've seen of just random black men walking up and punching white people in the back of the head when no one's done anything. They just walk up and punch them in the head. Now, I acknowledge a lot of these people are crazy homeless, but nothing's being done about it. And you now have a culture, and we talk about this on the victim side of things, a victimhood culture, wherein you're teaching black youths that are growing into black adults. And by the way, let's also not forget the fact that for a good year and a half to 2 years, there were black youth gangs going around just beating up white people intentionally on the streets. This was predominant in Philadelphia. This, of course, has all been memory holed by the leftist media because they don't want to talk about it, because it's an uncomfortable truth to talk about what has been happening. But everybody should acknowledge this is a major problem, because the culture has said, hey, you black youth, you have been abused. You are the victim. You have been attacked by the white man throughout this time. In current times, you have to fight back. You can do no wrong because this person is your enemy. That's why these things are happening. I mean, it's undeniable, because the uptick in attacks and the one-sidedness statistically of attacks, as far as black on white versus white on black, which is very minuscule, cannot be denied. It cannot be argued with. Yet they will bury it under something like, say, oh, well, because they're coming from a rough environment. Okay, well, who put them in the rough environment? Number one, that also comes around to leftists who created the entire welfare system, who created the ghettos, who created the redlining. These are the people who created the system that Black America finds itself in. And yet now we're supposed to completely excuse this behavior while telling Black people, yes, you're entitled to do this because the white person is your enemy and they have kept you down throughout this. And you are absolutely, this is rectifying a wrong by attacking these people, and we're not going to punish you. Whatever you might do here, we're going to look the other way. We're going to write it off. We're going to let you. I mean, George Floyd was a great example of this, right? People have said this before. George Floyd was held up as some sort of hero. George Floyd was a horrible person. I'm not saying what happened to him was justified at all. And again, there's questions of whether or not he died about fentanyl overdose versus the cop. And I was like, as a person who is very much against police brutality, I obviously fall on the side of, well, he didn't deserve what happened to him, but he was a terrible person who had held a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach. I mean, this is a career criminal. But we hold him up now as some sort of hero. And in the meantime, you've got all sorts of emphasis on, holding nobody accountable for what happened during the riots that went after his death. All of these DAs that were put into place, all of these leftist cities, let Antifa walk, let rioters walk, let people that attacked people violently, destroyed businesses, destroyed lives, destroyed homes, let them walk free with no repercussions. Do you not think that this is going to have an echoing effect on the general psyche, the understanding of culture and society of what is right and wrong, what is an act that will have a retribution from a community or from the government? Because what happens here, I'll tell you what happens here, is things get more dangerous. Because if you now have a white population which feels, okay, we are going to be under attack and we can never be comfortable around Black people because all of these things keep happening, well, what's going to happen? I ask you that. And I say this as somebody who grew up more than happy with everything that was going on in the world, being colorblind, welcoming everybody, diversity is great. And now I'm looking around and seeing what has happened here and how racism is at an all-time high, how, you've got these cultural institutions that are pushing the narrative that has us at each other's throats. And of course, I believe that government's complicit in this because it benefits the government to have people distrusting each other, hating each other, fighting about each other, because it allows them to continue to rape us through fiat currency, through ongoing warfare, through debt and everything else. But you don't think that eventually this powder keg that you fostered by telling people that they are constantly the victims on one class and another race of people that they're constantly the oppressors and they have to feel bad and they have to take whatever is coming for them, you don't think this is going to boil over at some point? I mean, you don't think, this is similar to the argument I made about open borders and immigration. And I have been proven 100% correct on this, by the way, as also with the argument I made about not enforcing homelessness and basic law. What happens is that when you have a situation like this, like with the borders, and you have runaway immigration, which leads to runaway costs, runaway violence from the gangs that have come over here, with people not having jobs, not feeling comfortable, then you have people that are demanding the government comes in and uses extreme force to rectify it. In our current society, because we've got all of this psychotic violence going on, and it tends to be one way, guess what is going to happen? It's one of two things. You're either going to have people start fighting back, and I mean fighting back, which you're seeing, by the way, with re-immigration emphasis in the UK and in other nations, massive protests that have gone on in Japan, in Germany, in France, in the UK, you name it, Scotland, Ireland, saying, get these people the fuck out of our communities because they are violent. They are not part of the community. They do not obey the rule of law. They do not want to assimilate or acculturate into a normal society with us. We can't have them here, right? That's one thing that can happen. The other thing that can happen is you have an even bigger crackdown. And you're talking about a population, if we're talking about the Black population of America, you're talking about a population that already has been cracked down upon, right? Already has been disenfranchised, already has the government working to keep their families broken up, already has the emphasis from the government to keep them on welfare, to keep them poor, to keep them stupid by denying them availability of voucher systems to get out of the shitty public schools they're in and actually go to better schools. All of this exists for this population that has been told that they're a huge victim on top of this and that they can do whatever they want. Now you're going to have the broader population of the country that's not this sector of 12 to 14% saying these people are a problem. They got to be cracked down on harder. Does that sound like a great solution to anybody? Or does that sound like you're now going to put these people even farther in the fucking shit? And it's because of all of this that you fostered over time. All of this emphasis on victimhood, all of this emphasis on it's so frustrating to see it because the outcomes are so obvious. Getting to this point was so obvious. And this was all exacerbated, as we mentioned, during COVID, right? When things hit a cultural peak of stupidity. And you had the same people who, again, have been disenfranchised, now further disenfranchised from an educational perspective, especially because you're closing down all the schools, you're closing down all the parks, you're making these more expensive. It's just, it's unbelievable to me. And then after all of this has come out in the wash, and we see the effects of this coming downstream, right? We see the shit running downstream of all of this cultural warfare the left's perpetrated on us and on the Black community, with the violence that's gone on here, with the judges, with the politicians, with the emphasis on optics over safety, as we mentioned, with San Francisco and cities in Michigan and other places refusing to release footage from public transportation because it might create racism, which is just code word for saying all of these attacks are by minorities on white people. That's all that code is for. All of this comes out. And what does our media do? In the wake of undeniable evidence that is repetitively coming out and released daily almost on social media, the media tells us that we're racist for noticing a pattern, that we're racist for saying this is fucked up. Brian Stetler, the fat little pig on CNN, which somehow got rehired, went on a whole tirade saying that seeing the video of the psychotic Black man murdering a little white girl for no reason on a train, and then, of course, muttering, "I got that white girl," that showed him how racist X was. Now, I'm not going to deny you that there are, without a doubt, people that are absolutely racist on X. There are people that are racist everywhere. And, of course, the people that are most racist are in the media because they're anti-white racists. But when you see a person like Stetler come out there and ignore the headline of another blue city lets a psychopath go for the 15th time and he ends up murdering a girl who's here, and again, a sacred cow of the left as well, the Ukrainian war, or sacred cow, you can say of anybody that's a neocon and a fucking idiot who doesn't understand that we're throwing money down the drain to try to start World War III. A sacred cow should have been a Ukrainian refugee. Oh my God. Can you imagine if it was a MAGA person that sliced this girl up, or somebody that wasn't on the Ukraine? Let's say somebody that's a libertarian, right? That's against the funding of the Ukraine war. My God, the media coverage over poor Iryna Zarutska. Instead of poor Iryna Zarutska, it is, oh my God, I can't believe you guys are so upset about this. And as the New York Times and several others, the Washington Post have painted and portrayed this, oh, it's a MAGA issue. It's not a fucking MAGA issue. It's a safety issue. It's a patently obvious issue of cultural degeneracy that has been perpetrated by the left, by the media, by academia, that has enticed one sector of the population, well, I should say two sectors of the population, to go about life in a completely different manner than the rest of us. And when you look at blue cities, when you look at the homeless problems, when you look at the issues with not having people in asylums, with re-releasing prisoners, with allowing them to go walk the streets and allowing violent people, because the libertarian argument for everything is non-violent offenders, non-violent crimes should not be rotting in prison. Smoking weed should not allow you to stay in prison because that's a non-violent crime. You're talking about violent people getting released again and again and again. And this goes throughout, every blue city you can imagine. You're looking at the media saying, well, this is a MAGA problem and not a holy shit. Our culture, our community, our cities have turned into unsafe zones because of obvious policy failures. But that's where we are. They will not acknowledge the pattern, and they will tell you once again that you're racist, and they wonder why. They wonder why the Democrats had the lowest polling, and it's going to go down from here. That's absolutely going to go down from here. The death of the Democrat Party cannot come soon enough. The death of the mainstream media cannot come soon enough. The corporate media is the enemy of the people. They've once again proven it today with their coverage of this issue and the ongoing denial of this being a problem. And that's just the plain facts. Okay. Oh, and by the way, don't forget that there was also multiple GoFundMe accounts created for this fucking psycho piece of shit that stabbed this woman. Because God forbid the guy gets a public lawyer instead of a super fancy lawyer to defend an act caught on camera from CCTV of him doing a heinous act that is unforgivable. I mean, it's just. Now, two more things I want to talk about, and then we'll finish this up. You talk about the issues going on in the UK, right? And I, as I mentioned, there are mass protests going on, and I wouldn't surprise me at all if you start seeing some sort of mass protests going on here. But you're seeing mass protests going on because they have these mass migration problems. The UK, as I mentioned in a previous show, took in something like, over the period of a couple of years, like 2.5 million refugees, which is an unbelievable number when you think about the population of that country. You've got entire cities that are now been taken over, become Muslim in just a period of a few years. And you have the amount of rapes and violence, especially rapes and violence against women, has skyrocketed. So you've got massive protests. And then what happens? Oh, well, the government tells you that you're racist for protesting, even though, as we mentioned just with this last video, it's very clearly one section of the population attacking another section of the population. And if you're going to go by racial or cultural lines, those sections of the populations that are doing all the attacking happen to fall on one side of the spectrum. So you protest, you're told that you're a racist and that having a problem with this is in itself an issue. You're not allowed to talk about it. And in the UK, if you talk about it, well, you get arrested. They tell you you're not allowed to even call someone a Muppet. Somebody got arrested for calling another person a Muppet the other day. This is on video. You're not allowed to talk about immigration. You're not allowed to talk about race issues. You're not allowed to talk about the fact that refugees are there. You're not allowed to talk about the fact that they're giving people hotels and apartment buildings. I just saw an article in the Daily Mail where a refugee just got off a boat. Again, this guy's, black refugee from North Africa somewhere, is given a brand new apartment as people in the UK struggle to pay their bills, struggle to pay rents. I said a similar thing here in Los Angeles, that while this ICE crackdown is going to piss a lot of people off, you talk about a housing problem, right? And California has a housing problem, not enough housing. Well, guess what solves a lot of your housing problem? Not having 10 million illegal immigrants throughout all of your housing, taking up Section 8 housing, by the way, and driving up the costs of everything. Because if you've got 10 million more people here that are renting all the apartments, guess what's going to cost more? All the apartments. Similar thing is happening in the UK. Can't talk about it, though. You will be arrested. You will be told that you have violated the law, and you'll be tossed in prison. Now, Banksy, of course, one of the treasures of the United Kingdom. Even the government, right? Fond of Banksy, because Banksy will go out there. He brings a lot of tourism. He brings a lot of attention to the UK. There's not many artists in the world. Banksy is like on the level of a Picasso now when you talk about famous works of art. Famous artists, anything they do gets covered. Banksy, on the side of whatever the courthouse, the Supreme Courthouse, or whatever they might call it in the UK, Banksy pastes an image of a protester lying on his back, holding up a protest sign with a judge coming after him with a hammer. Now the gavel. This is very clear what the message is. The message is Banksy saying, I am on the side of the people here against the tyranny of the UK government. I am against the tyranny of censorship. I am against the tyranny of judges denying people their right to protest and voice opposition to government policies that are failing. So what does the UK government do? As soon as they see it, they go over, they put a giant placard, metal placard, and concrete under it and put guards on it. And I've seen people, by the way, go in and move the fucking thing to show it again. Brave souls in the UK. But they first put a screen in front of it, an expression of free speech by one of the UK's most famous artists, and one of the most famous artists to ever live. The UK covers it up. Then they have a man in a full mask and ninja gear because they don't want to show his face. And I'm sure this man doesn't want his face shown. So I understand that. This is like I don't want to blame this guy because this poor man is like, they're like, hey, maintenance worker, go get this Banksy off the wall. And they do. They make him take it off with a circular stamp. This work of art, which now will live forever. Good job making it the most famous work of art of our century, I would argue. Wait and see. So they take it off, further enraging the population. You're going to see even more protests. But this is the death throes of a government you're watching. And you're watching the death throes of globalist governments all over. We just saw in Kuala Lumpur, or Nepal, the rioting of the local population and the dismantling and beatings, by the way, of communist leaders in that country. The Communist Party led the country. They banned social media. The people said, fuck you, we've had enough. Now, the fact that the people in the UK haven't done this is despicable. They should have already been revolting and rioting and absolutely tearing the government apart. I think that is coming. Because you have even police chiefs now saying this social media policy is absurd. We should be going after criminals, not people that are speaking their mind. And there's going to come a point, and I think that point is going to be happening very soon, within a couple of weeks, is my guess, where you're going to have police departments openly defying the government. Because this is Nazi Germany stuff. This is Nuremberg trials. This is we were only doing our jobs as they arrest citizens for trying to stop a government gone authoritarian, totalitarian, a globalist organized, effort to bring in and destroy cultures across Europe. And Europeans, as comfortable as they may be, except the fact they don't have fucking air conditioning, are not going to take it much longer. Banksy and the removal of that piece of art, I think, might be an underrated piece of the puzzle to the fall of the government in the UK. So we'll see. Okay, last thing, and then we'll call it a day, is that, well, actually two things. No, just one. Sorry. Two things under one topic is that there has been a trend, a continuing trend, because again, these leftist states and leftist cities, until maybe the midterms, are still run by fucking retards. And they still have it up their ass that white culture is bad, that white achievements is bad, and that colonialism was bad. Now, I have no problem with colonialism. I have no problem with white achievements. I have no problem with white conquest. I'm going to be perfectly honest, because I know that every nation across the earth, every civilization across the earth was a conqueror, was a colonizer, was violent, and took things by force. Do you know how I know that? Because that's how it happened throughout history. And I don't care what you might want to pretend about the Native Americans and try to pretend that they were peaceful. They weren't peaceful. They were very fucking warlike. They took slaves. They took scalps. They took, they had rapes. They did horrible, heinous things. The fact that every civilization has done this should be accepted. Colonization and colonialism was simply that same act. Until we got to the point where we finally had enough technological ability to freely trade with each other. And we still, by the way, are fighting and warring. Look at Russia and Ukraine. Look at Israel and Gaza. We're still committing all sorts of heinous acts, guys. But we have now at least the ability to trade freely, to ship goods. We don't have to create things or take things by conquest anymore, because we can create them. And through the system we have of capitalism and trade, we're able to do it peacefully. But before that fucking happened, it was conquest and colonialism. But these states, these cities like Austin, which Austin, you'd think with the mass influx of people that are not leftist fucking imbeciles, would be a little bit more tactful. Austin eliminated its seal. Instead, it has gone through what has been described as what looks like an asthma medication logo, and it does, with a A made out of two lines and a plus symbol between it. That's Austin's new symbol. Erasing the history, erasing the cultural messaging, erasing what Austin was founded on, which is in that seal, as with a lot of state seals. It's got a local animal, it's got a local trade, it's got maybe what the pioneers did, how it was founded. This is what's indicative of many seals for states and cities. Well, not for Austin anymore. That's not good enough. They had to get rid of that because, colonization. Same thing with Massachusetts. Massachusetts is famous for what, guys? Yes, the Mayflower. The landing of the Mayflower, one of the most famous boats. We thought that we were the first people to discover North America before the Vikings apparently came, and we found that out later. But wow, the people came here. What are oh God, I can't remember the name of them. The people with the funny hats. Oh, fucking. Well, the Quakers. The Quakers came over on the Mayflower. They get on Plymouth Rock. One of the most iconic stories in the history of American culture. And yet, Massachusetts wants to take the Mayflower off the flag, which they have now done. Because that boat, despite the fact that the people coming here, I'm sure they had some conquest over the Native Americans, which we all know happened, but still exploring, come to the North American coast, get off the boat. Wow, the Mayflower, what a thing. It's still a very relevant part of our culture, of our history. It's a historical fact. It is the founding of that state. Bye-bye. Poof, gone. Got rid of it because we can't have that because it might be offensive to Native Americans. So that's gone. What do they replace it with? A flower, the actual Mayflower. Because, people would be so offended if they saw the boat, the Mayflower. But despite the fact that the boat was named the Mayflower, and everybody knows the story of the Mayflower, if we actually have a Mayflower on there, totally not offensive. Now, this makes no sense. It's stupid. There's no logic to it. I'm sorry. Is it so blind people aren't offended? Because everybody else is still going to make the connection to the boat and the Mayflower. Just because it's a flower doesn't mean it doesn't still have the effect of the name of the boat being the Mayflower. But that's where we're at. That's the virtue signaling that exists with these blue states that have clinged to this aspect of cultural self-hatred, of racism overall, of needing to kowtow to a vocal minority of morons, and that continue to realize, or I'd say continue to go without realizing that they are losing. The culture has changed. They pushed it so far. They destroyed so much of what America is and was, of the culture, of freedom, of free interaction. They don't understand that every single thing they do is just making it worse, accelerating the trend faster toward their own destruction. God bless them. Keep the pedal to the metal, morons. Please, I beg of you. It's the only thing that's going to save this country. All right. Now then, I'd like to thank you guys for watching and joining me here on Mean Age Daydream. Again, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. And if you haven't yet, please do check out the first episode podcast, non-political podcast. It's just me and a couple buddies doing some reviews of a new show. And we're going to be doing, let me see. We're going to be doing a show. Oh, we're doing the first episode of 30 Rock this week. And then a new show, recording this live tomorrow, called You Were My First. I've not watched it yet. I hope it's a show where it's just finding your first bang and telling them you had an STD, because that would be awesome. I'd watch that show to the end of time. All right, guys. Appreciate you. I will be back later. From me, from the Lions of Liberty Network and from Mean Age Daydream, keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my brain.